Um, Fill me in. I saw you guys last week, right?
2 weeks ago, I think it was.
2 weeks ago? Okay.
Yeah. We've been working on Spot, and kind of, using different things that might kind of trigger him to come off because he's already high strung about it anyway, like the vacuum or,
Oh,
um,
sure.
one of us going out on the patio or something. And he got a little like, um, not as snarly as the time he was with like you and I in the room the one time, but he got a little irritated with the vacuum one. So that
Oh,
one really
sure.
tests him. So he doesn't like that, just the little handheld one. Other than that, we haven't had any issues like with him working with him and stuff. And we've been going more places because we're actually, showing our house and stuff. So we have to leave quite frequently. So he's been having to go, different places quite frequently.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And how's that been?
That's been fine. I've had to correct him in the crate a couple of times, with the barking and stuff. He just gets, kind of pissy right when I go to shut the back door. But other than that, it's been fine.
Okay. And pissy by just like barking?
Barking. Yeah.
How long before he settles down in the crate?
Oh,
Less than a minute or
yeah,
two.
it's
Not
like
long.
20 seconds. Yeah, it's very quick, especially if I'm correcting him. So.
And what number do you correct him at for that?
It depends. I start him at about, it's usually anywhere between like 30 to 40.
Okay.
Depending on the day. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No. I don't think so. No.
Okay. Sorry, it's been a long day. I've been outside all day, so like now I'm inside. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So what would you like to go over? Just refresh my memory here.
Yeah. So the obvious concern with us is just him being like guarding resources and stuff, and it's a little unpredictable as far as when and what he's gonna decide is his.
Sure.
And then in addition to that, when he even wants to go after somebody, because you can replicate the identical circumstance and he is fine one time and not the next.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of that unpredictability. And then the other issue is just the what was the other one?
We just talked about it this morning. Yeah.
I know we had talked about like the separation thing when one of us leaves before.
Yeah.
We've been working on that, and he goes into the bathroom without a gate, without a collar or anything, and he goes like we give him the command to go into the bathroom, and he stays there calmly until the other person leaves,
which he's never done before.
Yeah. So we haven't officially like worked on anything, but like just having him out of the immediate vicinity watching somebody leave, that's been helpful. And then the other one was what were you talking about?
I'm trying to remember. We talked about it for like 30 seconds this morning.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. But the other one was just then when people come over, kind of the barking and excitability of all that.
Okay. So for the separation anxiety one, so he'll go in the room, he'll go in the bathroom, he's fine until he hears somebody leaves.
No, he's previously he was watching somebody leave and like taking it out on toys or like barking or running around kind of like obsessively. And then what I've tried to do now is like when he's about to leave, I'll give him the command to go in the bathroom, which is on the other side of the house. So he'll go in there, he'll sit and he'll wait. And then he'll leave and it's fine. He's calm. He doesn't bark. He doesn't do anything. He just sits there waiting.
Okay.
So
that is better.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
It's just kind of like removing him from the situation of like visibly watching somebody leave. So I don't know.
Okay. So for me, when we're working on stuff, there's always more than one answer, I feel like, because life's not black and white. I really don't care how people address things. I just care that they understand that certain ways of approaching things can, like, there's workarounds, and then there's things that actively challenge the dog to make them better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like this morning I had a client, and she was having family come over, and then because we've not done anything, she had just started. I said, well, what I would do is meet your family outside and then walk in together as a group, because you avoid the problem of the doorbell and then the dog going crazy over the doorbell, right? Yeah. So it's a workaround,
right?
But it doesn't address the behavior of going crazy with the doorbell. Okay. So for the separation anxiety, when you're removing them from the space, you're actually kind of doing the same thing, but in a reverse fashion. With people coming in, if you go out there or meet them, or I've had people put their dog in a room and have the people come in and then wait 15 minutes and then have the dog come in, and the dog will be fine. Yeah. But if the door knock or doorbell happens, the dog goes crazy, and then it's worse, right? So that, like, think of that as kind of like a workaround. It's not that it's wrong, but it doesn't help the attachment or the anxiety aspect of it.
Right.
Okay. Because you're like, if he doesn't see them leaving, he's fine. Right. So ultimately he's not fine still. Right. So just so that we're aware of that, I'm not against it.
Yeah.
Okay. I just so that you're aware, it's just a workaround. Okay. So let's see here. The spot with distractions, that's going good. And then you tried with the vacuum cleaner, and that's when you saw him get a little bit more pissy.
Yes.
Okay. Heels muzzled up.
Yeah.
Okay. And then did you work him through it?
Yep.
And then have you repeated it?
Yes.
Okay. And how's it been the following times?
So with the vacuum, no, that was the first time. With some of the other things like going outside or cooking and stuff like that we've repeated and he's gotten better with. Okay. I think when we met with you last time, I think he'd got up to like 30 minutes at a time. And I think with at this point, we've gotten like up over an hour that he's been able to, stand laying there, and he's been fine.
Okay, cool. That's a good amount of time. So whenever we're pressing things, as soon as I find like a weakness, like in this case, the vacuum or whatever, I start targeting that. And then once that's not a problem anymore, I try to find something else. Yeah. So keep with that. That's good. And then when you do the vacuum thing, were you already like, because you said it's a hand vac?
Yeah, it's one of those hand one that you plug in.
Okay. And did you just bring it out and he went crazy, or did you turn it on and stuff?
Well, I brought it out and he immediately went on alert because he knows. And I don't think he got off until I went to plug it in. Then he got off, we corrected him. Then I turned it on, he went off again, we corrected him, got back. I mean, it was a few times back and forth because I did move around the house a couple times to vacuum, I had to unplug, plug in. So yeah, there were a couple times where he needed to be put back on, and Austin was kind of controlling him that time.
And you can correct the alertness, by the way, as well. Like when you said you brought it out and he went on alert. Yeah. There. Okay. But then it's like there's nothing to be alert about. Right. Just a hand vac, right? Yep. So you can correct those cues as well. So then the sooner you can get it, the better. But that's good. So continue with that, and anything else that you might find that really presses him, I would use that to your advantage. Okay. Okay. So the guarding resources thing. Because one time it was his bed, correct?
So, well, it's usually like a bone or it's. I would say I would say 90% of the time it's a bone, and then one random time we had a friend come over and she put wrapping paper down next to his bed, like a tube of wrapping paper for Christmas. And she went to pick it up, and that's when he attacked her hand. So it was near his like space. So that was weird. And then the last time with Austin was he walked past his bed like 2 days after the first incident with the bone.
The first incident being the bone?
Yes.
Okay. So it was near his space again, essentially.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So resource guarding. Pros and cons. A pro, in my opinion, is for the most part, if it's context based. It's if the dog has something, or whether it's a bone, an object, a toy, a stick, whatever it is, we can assume if that dog is in possession of something, we're going to see that. So that puts me a step ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I can know, all right, he's got something. I have no way to get him to relinquish it. I'm just going to let him be done and avoid the problem. Okay. Oh, well, not me personally. I confront the dog, but for my clients, I tell them that's an option. Okay. Because I'll make the dog give it up. When we talk about unpredictable, I just assume things. Okay. Whenever I get a dog that I don't know, I just assume they're a resource guarder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because most people don't, and that's how they get bit. I got a client right now that their puppy just turned 14, 15 weeks and has been showing resource guarding for like the past 3 to 4 weeks, and finally bit her hand.
Yeah.
And it's only a puppy, and then she's like, we thought we did everything right. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, things change, like personalities change. And it's a golden retriever. So breed doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay. So I just assume as the puppy's growing up, like, there's going to be changes. And whenever I go to near the puppy, like I'm looking for cues, something like if a dog is eating, even just pausing while they're eating is resource guarding.
The dog pausing.
Correct. Like they'll be eating, right? And all of a sudden you come near them and they stop.
Yeah.
That's resource guarding. It's very low level, right? Yeah. But most people wouldn't think of that,
right.
They're waiting for the obvious growling, teeth showing, snapping, like the really aggressive stuff. And I go, no, I'm like, it could be as simple as them, like, not eating any, like they'll literally stop eating, or they'll look at you as they're eating, So it's becoming more sensitive.
Yeah, he does that.
He does that, yeah. It's becoming more sensitive to these cues, okay? In my opinion, I don't believe in an unpredictable dog. It's just, as humans, because we're used to language, we're not so keen on body language anymore.
Yeah.
But deep down, it is a part of us. This is why, like, if someone is lying to you, like, you just feel uneasy, because their words are saying one thing, but their body language is saying is another thing. And that's why you get that uneasiness. Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to resource guarding, I would just assume anything that, like, whether he's on his bed, or if he's, near an object, outside of like the clear, obvious, his bone or a toy or whatever it is. And even if he's not displayed resource guarding before, let's say with a toy, I still assume.
Yeah.
Okay. Because people get caught up in that comfort of like, oh, well, the dog only resource guards bones and never has resource guarded a toy until one day the dog decides to do that. Okay. So I don't want to make you paranoid. I just want to make you aware. Okay. Because he's on a very primitive scale in terms of how he thinks of things. And people, even after time, will get complacent with things. Go like, oh, the dog's been great. And then they like ease up on things. And then it's like, then it's bad. Okay. So that puts you a step ahead, so that, like, let's say I'm walking, or I'm going to walk past Leon and he's by his bed. Well, then as I'm walking past, I'm like looking at Leon and I'm looking for any subtle cues. And it could be anything from like him going like this to like this,
Yeah.
And then just being aware of that. And like, let's say I see this to this, and then boom, he goes. Then I go, okay, like obviously the moment's there, we have to address it. But then the next time, I'm looking for that cue, because I know that's the pre-attack cue. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So in order to press certain things, you have to kind of stress the issue. Okay. So like, you cannot make Leon I'm just going to propose examples, okay? But like, I get clients where the dog, like let's say it's the wife with the dog, and the husband leaves the bed, the husband can't come back in because the dog will guard the bed. Okay, it happens. So then I go, okay, well then the dog's not allowed in the bed. That's the easiest answer, right? But people, but we want to have the dog spend time with us. I'm like, yeah, but if you leave and the dog didn't let it come back in, like how does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if Leon is possessing his space, okay, you cannot make him enjoy or like people walking past this space. The most that we can press for is that he tolerates it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if I know that's a thing, then I set it up where he's with the muzzle and then he's got his leash on with the collar. And then, maybe it's a cleaning day and I'm constantly just putting myself where I'm walking past him and he goes to attack my feet and I can remote him and correct him. And I would make it a harsh correction. Yeah. So like, what's the highest we've gone so far? Was it like 70, 80?
Yeah. And that I think was like the first day. It was, Yeah.
Part of that I think was too that we didn't have the collar like properly fitted.
Yeah, that's true.
But once we've gotten it fitted, I mean, we've kind of hovered in that 40 to 50 range.
I think then I think if we're ignoring that first day, I think the highest has been 60 then.
60. Okay. Yeah. So and this is an example, okay, because there's a lot of ways of working with this, is if let's say, I'm pressing this whole, like when I walk past you, you do not try to confront me, right? Is every time I walk past him, I'm just ready with the remote. And like, let's say he goes, you know what, that's the 100th time you walk past my bed today. I'm really tired of it. And goes, and he's muzzled, of course. I'm already at 60 because that's, because I'm planning for worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And I start tapping him. Now, let's say I tap him on 60 like 3 times, pop, pop, pop. And he goes, crap, bad idea. And he jumps on his bed and he's sitting there like just like really like, whoa, that was uncomfortable. We're good. And then I continue with what I'm doing. Okay. I'm looking to make a response from him where it's like, do I really want to try that again?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's caution. Now, let's say you do 60 and it stops him and like he goes and he like saunters back to the bed and he sits down, but he doesn't look that like worried about it. I expect I'm going to see it again. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I do the correction, me personally, for certain things, I want him. So like, for instance, let's say I gave a good correction. Okay. And I saw this kind of like behavior. A couple of days go by. I repeat the exercise or whatever. And I go to walk by Leon's bed. You'll see him move to the other side of his bed as I walk by. Okay, that movement away is avoidance. And he's going, there's no conflict here. So I'm going to give you a bit more space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we're dealing with aggression or aggressive type behaviors, I want to see avoidance, because avoidance means the dog is concerned about the consequence for the behavior. Okay, if there's no concern for the consequence, the behavior is going to stay there. Okay. So like when I get dogs that are reactive, like I just worked with one today, every time the dog was staring at a dog, we would tap and the dog would look away and then would, in this case, look at the owner. I didn't care that the dog looked at the owner. I just cared that the dog wasn't staring, because then it would become reactive.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're looking for him, because when he does this, as you're moving by or whoever's moving by, he's saying, this is going to make me uncomfortable. Okay. And a stress response can either be fight, right? Get away from my space. I don't like that you're this close. Or in this case, if we've created avoidance, is this response. Okay. So that's why I say you can't make him like these things when they're happening. You can only teach him essentially to tolerate or accept them. And in the beginning, it's usually this kind of avoidant behavior. Mm-hmm. So if we apply this to separation anxiety, okay, so I'm just going to paint a picture just as an example. Let's say, Austin is leaving the home and Leon's following Austin and he's just like, frantic, right? He's engaged with Austin, right? He's attached. So then I would use the collar to correct Leon, okay, and make him detach from Austin within that moment. So that might look like him chasing Austin. Then when you correct him, he'll run to the other side of the room and just kind of sit there, like still looking at Austin, but he'd be like away from him.
Yeah.
He's removed himself from Austin, because that's the problem, is that engagement, that attachment. And then Austin leaves, and then he's chill. Okay, he's relaxed because I disengaged them within the context itself, which is different from the, if I remove him from the room and he doesn't see the person leaving, then he's able to stay calm. Does that make sense? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a similar thing. It's not so much avoidance. It's as more so it is just him giving space. But, the part of the problem of separation anxiety is that the dog cares too much.
Yeah.
So if I correct him and he sees Austin leaving, you might find he just leaves the room himself, because he goes, "You're leaving? I can't handle watching you leave. So I'm going to just walk myself out of here."
Yeah.
But he's doing it.
Yeah.
That's the important part, is that Austin is making the decision. I'm not Austin, sorry. Leon is making the decision to remove himself in order to handle the situation. Okay. So going to reactivity, I had a dog recently that in the second class, like when he would see a dog, if this was the owner's leg, he would go like this and hide behind the owner's leg. And once the dog passed, he'd come out like this. Okay, so he was avoiding, and he was thinking, I can't handle seeing a dog without being reactive.
Right.
So I'm going to do this. Once it's clear, I can come out again.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the same thing for these things. So I'm not so much, there's working around things, which has its place, because there's going to be moments where it's like you're not going to be ready and you have to like figure a way around it. And then there's proactively pushing the issue. Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to guarding the space, when you have guests come, so it more often than not, I don't know if I've ever seen this actually happen. If you send a dog to a space, right? Like if you tell Austin spot and he goes there, I would not anticipate to see resource guarding at that point, because you placed them there.
Right.
It's when a dog positions himself or is in possession of something on their own terms, a lot of times, is when you'll see the resource guarding. Unless it's like an object, like if you give the dog a bone and then he's in possession of it, then obviously you're going to see it there.
Yeah.
But I honestly can't think of a time where if I sent the dog that would resource guard their bed to the spot myself with remote behind it, that I saw resource guarding after the fact. Because I put them there. Okay. So recognizing these things of like, did Leon place them? It's been a long day. Did Leon place himself, or did we place him? Right. So like if you have guests come over, there's an exercise which I'll send you. Did I send you those videos? The videos with the backing away from the door?
No, not yet.
Okay. Send door videos. So I'm going to send you those videos. Don't start them. Don't do anything with them yet. Just watch them and just learn what the exercise is. Because I think you had asked me about space, claiming space, right?
Yeah.
About Manny's videos. Okay. So these videos are talking about when a guest comes over, how you claim the space to essentially de-escalate the dog. So by the time the guest comes in, the dog is settled and not like in this active, anxious state.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's super important. And that can actually prevent a lot of stuff that would typically happen after the fact. Okay, because most of the time when people open the door, the dog is going nuts. Yep. So when you open the door, you're reinforcing that behavior. But if I settle them down and calm them down first, and then I open the door, you're reinforcing that behavior. Okay. And when we settle them down, so a lot of times when I get dogs that are like maybe they're too excited, they jump on people and stuff, The jumping isn't the problem, the excitement. So if you address the excitement, there's nothing to feel the jumping.
Right.
Unless the person goes like, "Oh my God, how are you?" Right? Like that's different because they're bringing in energy and then they're causing excitement.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same kind of thought process there. And if you're not sure about Leon's behavior, because there's coexisting and getting Leon to be with guests and not having to worry about, is he going to guard something? And then there's the approach of like, you know what? We're just going to have Leon in this area here where we know he's not allowed to move and we know he won't move for the duration of the time that our guest is going to be here. So that takes that stress off. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and it's a blend of these things. Okay. So the stuff that you've been doing with the spot is good. Once I send you the door videos and you watch them, and then I'll fill in the blanks of like how you would use that in conjunction, like with spot, or how it works in terms of like just getting them to be relaxed with people within the home. Mm-hmm. For the separation anxiety, what I would suggest is trying the approach of, and I would even for this exercise have him muzzled as a precautionary measure. Have him muzzled with the leash dragging on his own time, okay? And then, somebody leaves. But the moment you see Leon begin to escalate with the, like, what's going on here, yep, you're going to take your time, right? You're not going to say anything. And then at that moment, you would pause, okay? You'd stop moving. You're going to start remoting, and you start at your general obedience number. So if like you're working at 50, then start at 50, okay? The moment you see Leon escalate, give a tap, see what he does, okay? So there's tap, then response. So if he starts to get worked up and you tap him and he kind of looks around and like walks over and hops on the couch, then, if it was Austin, continues to, get his coat ready and all that stuff. And then if Leon perks his head up on the couch, you would stop, tap again, gets the tap, lays down. Then Austin would continue with what he's doing. Does that make sense? Yep. So every time you see Leon trigger, you freeze everything, okay? You use the collar to de-escalate him because the situation as is causing him to escalate. Mm-hmm. So if you continue with the situation, he keeps escalating and your remote's trying to cap him, but stuff is happening too fast that it's not gonna match. Yeah. Okay. So I do enough, cap him if needed, then continue with what we're doing. He escalates again, cap him, continue, right? Until eventually Austin leaves the home and Leon's just chill, but he's within the context. Yeah. Okay, we're not removing him. And then you keep repeating that until we see that Austin can start getting ready and Leon's just like sleeping on the couch. He doesn't even open his eyes. Yeah. Because you've essentially taught him, because he is just proactively engaging as a default when he sees something happening, right? And like he has to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And what we're going is we're saying you're not a part of it. So then when you're capping him, the brain isn't able to go to that next step, as eventually he just goes, well, this has nothing to do with me. So why do I even get worked up about it? Yeah. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that one's easy. For the guarding resources thing, one, if you're going to press the spatial thing or the nearest bed area, what I would suggest with, which maybe you're already doing this proactively, is like toys and like bones and antlers and things like that, I just always keep put away. Okay. Is this something that you're already doing?
So kind of by default, but since kind of everything happened, we haven't given him any high value bones. Okay. He's got like one of those bamboo chews or something that he's never gotten defensive over, and it's a little more low value, so we're not quite as worried about it. And then as far as toys, they've been mostly put away because we've been showing the house. So like the other day, he had a toy out for a couple hours or something, but kind of back and forth with with it being out and stuff not being out. So we used to have it where all his stuff was accessible.
Right.
So.
Okay. So, if you do bring a toy out for him, how engaged is he with the toy?
He loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's very engaged.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you ever a part of that in activity?
Sometimes he'll bring it to us. Yeah. And like want us to throw it or something.
Yeah. If he'll bring a rope by and wants to play tug or something.
Yeah. It's like 50-50 whether if we're like standing there, he'll bring it up to us. But if we're out of the room or something, he'll just play with it.
Okay. So he's very he's got a good toy drive.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Does he have a release command?
Yeah. Drop it. He drops it.
Yeah, he'll drop it. I wouldn't trust him to drop a bone, but yeah, for toys and stuff.
But he does have a drop.
Yeah. And they're he gets those stupid squeakers out, and those stuffed animals. So we've taught him to bring that to us so that we're not taking it from him and he doesn't feel like we're taking,
Yeah.
We don't want him to swallow it, right? So we've taught him to bring it to us and then we'll trade it for a treat is what we've been doing the last couple of years.
Okay, that's fine. So what we want to do is teach a more formal drop where he will release anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now this does take time to teach. Sorry?
My leg included?
Your leg included, yes. Well, ideally, your leg wouldn't even get in the mouth in the first place.
Yeah.
But I suppose you could use a drop.
Yeah.
So what we want to do here is I would start with his toys first. Okay. So I have no problem, for instance, with tug. I play tug with my pit. She loves tug. But I have complete control. If I tell her to release, she'll release and it's the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Is when we're incorporating remotes behind the cue of drop, it's not uncommon to see a dip in drive in terms of toy drive or interest in bones and things like that. It's kind of just part of the territory. In very, very rare cases, it might even get to the point where the dog wants nothing to do with the objects anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a trade-off. People get too wrapped up with wanting the dog to have these things, but then also not wanting the dog to be a jerk about giving up those things. And I go, we can try to get that medium, but if we don't, there's cases where it's either the dog's gonna bite you for something or they don't take things.
Yeah.
So
I'm not biting.
Yeah.
So I would take his favorite toy, something that you can engage with him with, and we can even do a 2-person deal with this to make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say there's a toy that he likes to play tug with. Okay, I come out with to Leon, come here, bud, right? Bring it out. He bites on it. I grab it. We're playing tug. Okay, and then we would find a number. I would most likely go down. If his number is 50, I'd probably go down to 25 on the remote collar. And when you cue the word drop, you're gonna stop, and whoever's gonna do the remote is immediately gonna start tapping on the remote. Okay, and when you stop, I like to hang a bit, because when you hang just a little bit off the ground, it keeps the dog they don't want to let go of the object.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of hold. You might even kind of continue to get this motion. Yeah. So I'm not engaged with him anymore, but he's still engaged with the activity. Okay, so at this way, the other person. So I said drop. He's still tugging, but I'm not giving. I'm not still interacting with him. I'm just kind of bracing it. And then whoever's got the remote, 25, 28, 31, 34, and then he steps back and he lets it go. And then the moment he lets it go, I go, yes. And I go back again and we start playing tug. Okay. We do that for a minute or so. Then I'll say drop, freeze, again, him a little bit in the air, the helping hand, tapping at that 34. He spits it out. Yes. Boom. Okay. And then we feed again. So what we're trying to do here is create an instant drop where he doesn't even think about it.
Yeah.
But then the reason for the immediate reward is to let them know in the beginning, it's not a complete like one and done. Okay. And we continue to engage them. So we're, instead of targeting the bone, I know the bone is the hard part, because you said like he'll drop his toys, but it's the bone that we don't trust him to drop, right? Is you're doing something that we know is easier to get the foundation in, to practice on a consistent basis. And then once you're like, hey, this feels pretty solid, then we progress to the bone, okay? Now, when we go to the stage of the bone, we don't have to wait. People think when we deal with resource guarding is like, if the dog's got the bone, that you have to come in and the dog's growling at you and then you start doing the work. No, okay? Because you've already created the conflict, right? And you're more likely going to get bit because now there's confrontation, right? He could be with his bone on his bed and I can be across, you know, in the kitchen while he's in the living room and I'm 40 feet away and I can go drop and not even trigger the resource guarding, okay? So what we're doing is we're teaching the drop, but we're gonna build it, okay? So we're teaching drop with the toy first, make it easy, and then we reward right away, okay? So I want him to think that drop is boom, very quick, okay? So that he doesn't think about it. So that ideally, when we go to the bone part, if I cue drop, he just spits it out, okay? But then the next thing we want to create is space, okay? Because let's say he drops the bone. A lot of people will say drop, the dog drops it. They're still staring at it. And then they go to pick up the bone, the dog goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay? So we want drop and give space, okay? So, but I don't want to do that with the toy stuff because then you're not going to be able to have that consistent practice.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if, and because you said 90% bone and a couple of times near his space and with the toys, it sounds like you feel fairly confident that you have verbal control to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And you've not seen any tension there. Is that correct?
Right. Right.
Okay. So yeah, we're taking something that's completely, as far as we know, conflict free to build this skill. Now, dogs can learn to differentiate, by the way. So like, let's say, you know, if I'm playing fetch with him and I say drop, and I know I don't have to worry, or I assume I don't have to worry about resource guarding there, and when he drops it, I can pick it up and throw it because he knows the game, then I don't need him to give space when it comes to the tennis ball. He will learn that pattern. He will learn with the tennis ball, it's okay if I drop it, I don't need to walk away from it. But with the bone, I have to drop it and walk away from it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
You can fine tune it according to the object.
Yeah.
And the reason why we want that space with the bone, and I have a very specific way of like how I approach the bone. Like people just walk over and like just think it's done. As I'm approaching the bone, I'm watching Leon because I've had dogs engage again from like 8 feet away.
Yep.
Well, they'll try to charge, but since they're at 8 feet away, I have plenty of time to stop them with the collar to back them off. Or they'll be fine with that until they see me crouch down to pick up the bone. But when I do that, I'm not looking at the bone, I'm looking at the dog. Okay, and then I crouch down, I pick it up. I look for any moments of tension or any forward movement from Leon, because if I go to touch the bone and he starts to move forward, he's telling me, hey, I'm still interested in that. So I would correct him there to back him off. And I go, look, once that cue drop, you spit it out, you give me 8 feet and it's off limits. Okay, but we're not getting that extreme level of resource guarding because we cued the release command and made him release without even triggering the conflict. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So for now, with the resource guarding, still avoid the bone. I mean, if you're giving them that bamboo thing and you feel fine with that, like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I would do with whatever you've been doing. So like the trade-off with the treats is fine. It's a workaround. But I want to just save the remoting with the tug or toy exercise. Okay. And this is going to take time. Okay. Because hopefully it works out well. But like if he starts to dip in his play drive, you have to kind of engage him and, see if we can get him to come back. If he doesn't, I put it away. I try again later. Then later on in the day, I try again. He's like, nah, it's not fun anymore. The next day, try again. Nah, the next day, right? So eventually he's like, okay, what happens today?
Yeah.
And I start playing with them, and then we continue the exercise. And it's like kind of in the beginning where he's gonna engage and then not want to engage, and then like you go back and forth. But once he learns, like, oh, like if I just drop, the tap doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean it's done. We're gonna continue to play. I just need to release it right away.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Questions about that?
I guess my only concern would be then if he's getting the tap because he wouldn't have his muzzle on, if there's going to be like a redirect.
But that's why we're doing it with the toys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing, and that's why we go down low too.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So is it a possibility? Technically, yes. I don't anticipate it because, and that's why earlier I was like checking, like we've not seen resource guarding with the toys, correct? And I was like, it sounds like you're fairly confident in the control of the toys, and it sounds like that, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why we were going down lower, and you can go down to 15 as well.
Yeah.
If you want to start even lower, so that we don't just catch them off guard and it's like, whoa, what was that? And then potentially piss them off.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's say you're engaging with him, and you tell him drop, and it feels like you're pissing him off when you're trying to do the remoting. Okay. What I would do then is pause on the remoting, and then just wait a second and start to engage him again very slowly. So because dogs are like one topic to another. Okay. Like if he's pissed off because he's guarding something, right? And like, let's say I threw a piece of chicken and he saw the chicken, like he'd literally go to eat the chicken and like switch mindsets.
Yeah.
That makes sense? Like the one thing that's a positive with working with dogs in this sense is I go, well, if I can redirect the brain, like it's like an immediate shift. The tension is gone. Whereas with humans, like you'll hold on to something. Okay. So dogs are very much in the moment. So like if you feel like the tapping as you're pausing, right? Like waiting for him to release, if you feel like it's agitating him, you can have the cue of like, pause or stop the remote. Person stops and you wait a moment and then start to move the toy. And then he should just shift to like, oh, we're playing again. And then you go back to that. Okay. And then you let me know. So then I go, okay, we got to figure something else out.
Yeah.
Okay. But and we take our like it's not like drop tap 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 tap. It's drop tap 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 bump tap 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 bump. Okay, it's a very slow rhythm. I know earlier I went like this because I was but it's actually slower taps.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm doing slower because I'm trying to keep the balance of engagement but also control. Right. And then once you hit that perfect number where it's like right off that first tap, he just releases it. He releases the toy and I can re-engage him again. And then I go, okay, cool. Like, 24 seems to be the perfect number. So then it's just practice sessions until you feel like you got a really good release. And then I start to experiment with it. And like, maybe I apply it to like, fetch or something. When I throw something, he grabs it and he brings it over. Like some dogs will tug the ball. I'll drop, cue the word drop, dog spits it out. I go to reach for it. If you see any intention to go back for it, not in an aggressive fashion, but kind of like, dogs being impatient, I correct that as well. Because once you cue the word of drop, until you say yes or break, that object is off limits. Okay.
So then when you're kind of wrapping up, right, you've done the drop, like say 15 times, you've played drop, play, drop. Then the last time it's like a final drop, you do the same command and then you put it away and that's like it.
And I don't ever hide things from the dogs. So like some people say drop and then they'll tuck it in their coat or something. I say drop and I hold the toy like I normally would by my side. I walk to the cupboard and like, let's say he's jumping at the toy. He's still engaged.
Yeah.
You would correct that.
Okay.
And I don't move. I'll just stand there, you know, and then keep the toy by my side. And he's trying to bite at it. And every time he tries to bite at it, I just remote him, no words. And then he's going to learn, like, oh, when you say drop, it's done. Game over. Okay. So then what you'll start to see is when he really gets the concept and you cue the drop and you go to the end of session, is I bet you he's going to shake. Like that kind of shake, you know, the stress shake.
Yeah.
Because he's letting go of all the stimulation. So like my pit Lexi, I like to grab her by the jowls and I'll roughhouse with her.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, she gets like growly and stuff like that, right? And I'll push at her and I'll mess around with her. And then I go, okay, we're done, right? I go, tsk, and then she'll stop and she'll shake it off and then go lay down and go to sleep. Okay, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Right. So I would gamble that you're going to see the same thing too. Once he gets the concept and you say drop and you just get up and you start to walk away, he's going to look at you, go, we're done. Shake and then go do something else. Okay. And when you've gotten to that point, you've got a very good concept of control, and that's the end of the game.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions?
Nope.
No.
With the stuff that he would actually guard, do you happen to have any of that like in the home now, or is it kind of like you haven't messed with it because you don't want to deal with them?
We haven't messed with
Yeah,
it.
we haven't. Yeah, we don't have anything right now. Like
Sure, yeah. Not that you need anything, but just like when we start to get to that point where it's like, hey, we want to, and by the way, he doesn't have to have bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the stance
we've taken.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have no problem with that. But the reason why I would still do this isn't because you don't know if whenever he is going to guard something, right? Like I had another client whose dog picked up a piece of plastic and bit both of his hands.
Jeez. Yeah.
You know, but you know, like who'd have known that she was going to guard a piece of plastic?
That's how we were with the wrapping paper. It's like, what a stupid thing to get possessive.
Welcome to dogs.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and when it comes to your guests and stuff, like I understand, like people, they're not going to think like that, you know, but I would just like, you know, make rules of like, you know, not setting things down by him or whatever. That prevention is always the easiest way to address things.
Yeah.
And we're more so covering this in case you find yourself in a moment where it's like, holy crap, he's like guarding the toilet paper roll.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever, or maybe he's got something that he's not supposed to have. That's why we're doing this. So we're like doing things to prevent it from happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other things that I would do, like for instance, does he ever charge for things? Like if he drop food on the floor, does he like go for it, or
yeah.
So
that's why I was kind of interested in that space thing that Maddie was doing, because we currently have a command to get Leon out of the kitchen. Like we've got the tile, so he's supposed to be on the carpeting. But you know, that gives us a little space from him. But if we drop something, he does try to run up and
go for it.
Yeah, usually I'm covering it with my foot just to prevent him from.
It's like a shark with blood in the water.
Yeah.
Sure. So what I do with that is I would have Leon on leash. And I'm trying to think. I mean, it really doesn't matter with this kind of stuff. So I create default rules. I would have the leash on just as a precaution.
Yeah.
And I suppose you could do muzzle as well if you don't want to have to, because the concern of if he goes for it and you use your foot to cover it, and then you try to remote him to back away, possibly, okay, is, you know, I'm in the kitchen, you do the rule like you have been doing, and then I intentionally drop stuff. And I have my remote already at 60. I'm already at that upper range. And the moment he even looks at the food hit the ground, I remote right there.
Okay.
So then what he ends up doing is when he sees food drop, goes the other way.
Yeah.
Okay, that kind of avoidance.
Yeah.
And I did this with another client's dog just recently, like a week ago, because her dog had an issue when like somebody had dropped a treat and two dogs went at the same time. And then, right. So I said, all right, then we're going to teach the dog that when something falls on the ground, she got to go the other way. So then we're not going to get that problem. Okay. And this is a default behavior. I don't put any cues to this, because if you drop something and Leon goes for it and you say no, and then you remote him, technically he can go for things until you say no. Right. So I want to teach that the cue technically is the food hitting the ground. So he goes, man, every time I see the food hit the ground, my collar lights up. I better go the other way. Okay. And then you might even see him like when you're in the kitchen, stay away from the kitchen entirely. Because he's going, I don't even want to be tempted or risk that happening. And I go, good. And then I go in the living room and I drop something in the living room. Where you go now? Right? Because I don't want him to think that it's about the space, because he might, if you only do it in the kitchen, he might think it's just the kitchen. Right? So then when you drop something in the living room, you might still see that behavior. Okay. So then we want to see him go in a different space. Okay. And then once you feel comfortable or confident enough where it's like, oh, like he's got a pretty good concept of it, and you know what his number is, that's going to stop him and deflect him immediately. Then I start doing, no muzzle or no leash or whatever, and then dropping stuff. And I might even throw something in his direction. Like I'll be a real jerk about it. And then it'll plop next to him and he's just going to walk away. Okay. Now, if that happens, where let's say you throw something at him, he walks away and gives space. When you go to approach it, you'd want to approach it as if he's going to guard it. Does that make sense? Like you're just assuming, even though he walked away from it, because it's kind of like maybe he's fine and he's like, all right, cool, I want nothing to do with it until you have something to do with it. Right? Because then now your interest makes it more appealing to him. Potentially something there. Okay. I would doubt it, but I could see that happening. Okay. So you're working at this from a number of different spaces. You're looking at prevention, where it's like, we don't even care if he has a bone or not. Too bad. Right. And then we have teaching the drop, so that if he should ever get in possession of something he shouldn't, if we've cued a really good drop, it's going to be effective. Okay. And then 3, just the default behaviors of, if we drop something or a guest drops something, you have nothing to do with it. You by default just go to leave. So then he never gets to something that he would potentially guard. Does that make sense? So it's all these things in play, at least for the food stuff. The spatial stuff, if you're sending them there while a guest is over, like I said, I wouldn't assume that I would see anything there, because experience has told me it doesn't really happen. Okay. Doesn't mean that it can't, just means I haven't seen it. Okay.
And we've been careful, like, when people are over, like, we're not giving him stuff that he would guard. So if anything, it would just be the space, or picking something up, like from, somebody dropping it or something like that. So
sure.
Something that we're giving him,
Yeah, because your guest doesn't know, or I would assume some of your guests wouldn't know Leon as well as you do, right?
Right.
And or if like it's always, I think, easiest to just be like blunt, like don't give them anything. Right. And just be mindful, because some people, you'll say stuff like that and they're like, oh no, it's fine, and it's not. I've had that happen. Okay. Questions?
No,
I don't think so.
So all that's really left, because we talked about the spot, that's going well, that's good. We talked about guarding resources, this whole space thing. If you want to press that, but like I kind of feel like you're not really even going to see anything. Because those 2 moments, especially if you've placed them yourself. And dogs can tell the difference between a setup and like life.
Right.
And it's like, okay, let's go collar him up and let's go bring out the vacuum and, muzzle him up. It's clearly very set up. Okay. So then the real training is in life or more organic situations where it's like, you know, let's say you're gonna have a bunch of friends come over for like a few hours, and you know, Leon was free roaming, and since I'm like assuming like this is the first time, and this is an example, right? I'm anticipating things like he'd be muzzled with the leash dragging, and I got the collar on, and I'm just letting him be Leon, but everybody's just being themselves. You know, to see if there's anything that I need to watch for, or whatever. Like that's what I do in my other cases. Okay. That's more, even though he's set up, the fact that everything is lax is what makes it feel more organic, you know, and then I repeat and I repeat and I repeat. You know, a handful of instances doesn't dictate, you know, how he'll be for like the ongoing future. Yeah. You know, because people have a couple of great instances and then they'll be like, oh, this was amazing. And then after like a couple of times having people over, they'll like remove the muzzle and stuff. And then they're like, the dog's great. And then the dog bites somebody.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they moved they got complacent. They're like, because just like with people, you know, like I have my bad days and I have my good days, right? Same thing with dogs. You know, and it's just being aware and like reading his behavior and maybe you had people come over and for whatever reason, he just looks stressed out. Yep. Then I might go like, you know what? Maybe we should just kennel him. You know, like make your life easier. Don't worry about like, he looks uneasy. We should keep an eye on him. And then you're stressed out and then, you know, you're not enjoying yourself either. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Not that I can think of. He's done pretty good while we're sitting here talking.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have him on spot right there?
Yeah.
His little face.
Yeah.
It looks like Bane.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had one of my clients just calls dog Little Lecter. So the people coming in is the last thing. Yep. I mean, you'll probably have more questions, you know, about like the outing exercise and stuff like that. It's fairly simple. Just start with the toy, right? And then we'll start to progress that. That's going to take time. Yeah. The separation anxiety, I would, you know, try confronting that. Muzzle, dragging leash. Any moment you see him escalate, you remote him, cap him, and then move forward. And I'm going to send you some videos for you to review. So you can see, one is the door exercise. I did one pre-COVID. So it's me actively coming in and stuff. And then there's one that we've done a couple over the Zoom. There's one that actually is like a pretty good example. Yeah. So that you can see both aspects of how we did it with in person, but also how it worked over the Zoom. But I wouldn't do anything with it yet until we actually like go over it and then we talk about how we're going to apply it. Now, are you settled in a place already, or are you like in the middle of moving?
No, we have our house up for sale and then we will be moving once we find a place. So, I mean, we've still got at least a month or so.
Okay. There's no rush for this, but like, you know, because it's really just like, let's say we did it in your current place. You would simply just take the idea and then adapt it to the new place. Yeah. Okay. And the hardest part for him most likely is going to be learning with the remote to like back off of something. Yeah. Okay. So, you know, we may see a little bit of conflict there, but he'd be, you know, of course, muzzled and all that stuff in the beginning. But don't worry about doing anything like actively applying these things for the door. Okay. It's more so just to become familiar with it. Yeah. You could technically use this approach for like other things. Like let's say like you don't want him in the kitchen. I think like you said, the tiling he's off limits and he's got to stay on the carpet. Is you can put remote behind that as well. Would act, which if he really respects that, it wouldn't matter if you drop something then, because he would already know like I can't go on a tile anyways. Okay, so that would be like two different exercises. Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
With the toy thing, I mean, it sounds like that might take a while. When would you recommend setting up the next Zoom session, I guess? Like, should we wait a few weeks, or is that something we should do a little sooner?
I give it a couple of weeks because now it's all the in-house stuff.
Right.
Because if all this is going well, right, and you're feeling good, and you're like, he's responding really well. The next things I would just do is more just obedience for control type of things. Is I'd give it a couple of weeks.
Okay.
If in the meantime you get stuck or whatever, or if you have questions, just shoot me an email.
Okay.
And then I can answer your questions. It'll give you enough time to watch the videos. And then if, in a couple of weeks by the next Zoom session, I can help tie up any loose ends with the drop command in the remote. If there's anything left, otherwise it's just going to be continued work.
Okay.
And then we would move on to like applying the door exercises so that you can have people come over and Leon be calm.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, good job, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. I know it's a process, but behaviors, it takes time.
Yeah.
You guys are doing good.
Awesome.
If anything pops up, any questions, big or small, always feel free to reach out with an email. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, we'll plan for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks,
good.
Jesse. Appreciate it, man.
Have a good night.
You too.